Well, this is an amazing way to start off the day. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
That was a big deal to deliver those 2 gold medals for the men's and the women's basketball teams. You've talked a lot about sort of what that means. We're at Bloomberg. What does it mean for the business of basketball to win those 2 gold medals, for the U.S. to take it home?
Well, it was an incredible experience, first and foremost. And for the game of basketball, although at times it was a bit nerve-wracking and maybe a little closer than we would have liked, I thought overall it was fantastic for basketball. You had a great Team USA team with some legends on the team, some icons, LeBron James, Stephen Curry, Kevin Durant, guys who had been faces of the league for the last decade plus, really getting tested, having to come through and do some real incredible things at the end of games. But then you had teams, international teams, Serbia, which they were so good and so worthy of winning and played a perfect game in our semifinal game. But the way they competed and how fearless they were in that game. And then the host country, France, with a young Victor Wembanyama.
Yeah.
And how they kind of put it together that last week and really tested our team. And then the women's team as well, and as dominant as they've been through the years on the international stage, but they too got tested.
Yeah.
And so I just thought overall for the game of basketball across the globe, it was wonderful for the game and helped promoting just the beauty of it, the competition, the excellence. Teams were worthy of winning, and unfortunately one team wins.
Yeah.
And thankfully, it was us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because really, we don't have to dwell on this, but it was gold or bust. I mean, your job is not easy.
Yes, and you
were very aware of that.
Very much aware. Look, you saw the Serbian team, and you saw a lot of the athletes competing on the Olympic stage where they win a gold medal, a silver medal, or a bronze, and it's a celebratory moment. It's a moment, of achievement. Serbia, they lost to us, they won the bronze medal, and they're like celebrating on the medal stand. It was a beautiful thing. For us, it was gold or bust.
Yeah.
And you really felt that. You felt that pressure, particularly in the medal rounds. And it was unlike any pressure I've ever experienced. Steve Kerr, who was our head coach, and Steve Kerr has had a pretty illustrious career, 5 NBA finals as a player with Chicago and San Antonio. He's coached in 6 NBA finals, having won 4 with the Golden State Warriors. And he even acknowledged there was no pressure like that pressure.
Wow.
And so we just kept saying, we got 5 days and 3 games. Like, let's just get through it. Let's coach to win. Let's play to win. But it was incredible. It was rewarding, and it was hard.
Yeah.
And to be able to embrace the hard, I think on the other side of that was incredibly fulfilling.
So it's got to be a moment, as a very savvy business person and investor, you have to look at this as a huge opportunity, not just for USA basketball, for global basketball as well. You're a co-owner of the Atlanta Hawks. You're deeply involved in the game. You're an investor in NBA Africa. What's the business case, or how strong is the business case for global basketball at this point, especially given some of the talent that's emerging? But how does this play out on the money side?
That's a great point. First of all, the impact of the Olympics and basketball, 2 things. One, the '84 Olympics, when here in Los Angeles, coached by Bob Knight, Michael Jordan was about to enter the NBA. That inspired me. Like, watching that, being engrossed in the whole Olympics, Carl Lewis, Mary Lou Retton, but watching that team, like, I thought that I want to do that. I was 11 years old. I dabbled in a number of sports, and like a lot of kids, I had that dream, but it inspired me. Then fast forward, '92, the Dream Team.
Yep.
And really kind of inspired the entire world. And the game now, the success of that team and the success of David Stern and Adam Silver and countless others, like, it's a global game. 30% of the NBA now are foreign-born players. Our most recent MVPs have all been international players. I can go all over the world, and thankfully I've had the opportunity to do that, and people identify me with the game of basketball. And, 25 years ago, that might not have been the case. And so you talk about, NBA Africa and sort of that new opportunity there and the investment in the growth of the game. It's just staggering to me. And so to have this world stage where everybody is watching the Olympics, and basketball is one of those signature events, along with track and field and women's gymnastics and others. And then to have, LeBron James, I don't know if there was another athlete, with all due respect to the number of great athletes who were all there from all over the world, but I don't know if there's anyone that was as popular or as famous or as celebrated as a LeBron James. And so all of that focus on them, it will have an impact, much like the '84 team did to my generation, and I think much like the Dream Team in '92 did. And so it continues to move the needle. You see the new media rights deal that was just agreed upon between the NBA and some of the old and new media partners. The business of basketball is in a great place. And I believe that our Olympic experience, our success, will play and continue to play a big role in that.
And so how do you take advantage of that? As someone who is, tasked with growing the game, obviously through USA Basketball, but also in other events, what are the business decisions that you take on to sort of match this moment or candidly, exploit this moment for commercial gain, essentially, or popularity?
Yeah, I mean, sort of taking the athlete's mindset, you look to improve when things are good.
Right.
You don't, naturally when you lose, you look in the mirror, you self-reflect, but when things are good, that's the time where you say, okay, how can we be better? How can we continue this? And, one of the areas is how can we evolve our grassroots development in basketball in the U.S. We've spread the game all over the globe, but I think we've taken our eye off of what we're doing here in the States. And so there's an opportunity there, not just in terms of the monetary benefit, but also just in terms of, development and continuing to position ourselves to be gold medalists on the international stage. We can have some players who are American-born domestic players continue to be the faces of the league in years to come. I think we have to just continue to work on developing talent. And that's one of the real, I think, opportunities that we have here in the States. But I mean, the popularity, it's funny, when I was preparing for the NBA draft, this was back in 1994, as my children say, the last millennium. And I went out to visit with Nike. And I, eventually signed with the Italian shoe company, Fila. But I remember having an audience with Phil Knight. And Phil Knight was talking about Asia at that time and was talking about this idea of an untapped market. And it was so foreign to me. And he even said, we'll have you at the Great Wall of China via satellite for the NBA draft. And everybody at the meeting table was like, that's a great idea. And just, and I'm thinking, I want to be at the draft. I want to shake Commissioner Stern's hand. Yeah. But the vision that he had, the vision that David Stern had, the vision that others had to really now plant that flag and grow the game. And now kind of approaching soccer in terms of its presence and its reach all over the world. But we can't rest on our laurels. We have to continue to work the game, grow the game, promote the game, celebrate the brilliance and greatness of players all over the world. And whether you're in ownership, whether you're an investor, whether you're in television, I think collectively we all play a role in doing that. And so it's an exciting opportunity and also an exciting responsibility that we all have as caretakers.
Well, and to your point, when you think about that global growth, you think about the global players who are coming in, whether it's Wembanyama, whether it's Joker, all these players, Joel Embiid, obviously, a lot of MVPs that you alluded to, Giannis being another one, of course. what does that do for you're an owner, and we're going to talk about your ownership across sports in a minute, across other leagues. What does it do for the business of basketball here in the U.S. that you do have this global focus? I mean, is that part of what's driving valuations higher? Like, how does that contribute to the growth of the game financially?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all plays a role. Global media rights are certainly huge, and certainly a big part of our current revenue model, but also, potential revenue model moving forward. But yeah, I mean, I think it merchandise, just the social media engagement, all of that plays a role in its growth, its success. But look, ultimately, it's the product. It's the product on the floor. And it's the brilliance, it's the excellence of players today. There's this unhealthy discourse that I don't like about our current game. And it's sort of, who's the GOAT?
Yeah.
Is it LeBron? Is it Jordan? And to a bigger point, is it today's generation versus the 90s or the 80s? And I feel like we're the only sport that gets into this debate. Football, they don't talk about, you don't put down Joe Montana to elevate Tom Brady. You celebrate all the greats. And that's something, and I don't necessarily know it's the players doing that or the league doing it. I think it's just the noise.
Sometimes it's the players doing it.
Okay, well, sometimes, I
mean, just based on social media, I'm just
but also sometimes it's the older players.
Yeah.
And so that's the one area that I don't like. Like, to me, we should just be celebrating the game. And quite honestly, what these players are doing today, the skill level, the development, it's better. And it should be better. And if it's not better, then we did a bad job as guys who came through. Like, we inspire the next generation. And so as great as the Stephen Currys are, and as Kevin Durant and LeBron James, and truly some of the greats to have ever played, they're kids right now who've been watching them, who've been inspired, and I believe will emerge. It always happens in every sport, in every era. And so we have to just continue to celebrate the excellence that exists. Sorry for emoting about that, but that's an area that I don't like that discourse.
Yeah, that's interesting. I want to shift. Actually, let me ask this audience, since we're talking about the NBA. I'm going to pivot a second and ask this audience question. Curious to get Grant's thoughts on the power of the NBA player. On the one hand, NBA has turned into a 12-month sport with July free agency. On the other hand, players are moving teams like never before. How does that evolve, and is it good or bad? Very good question. Whoever asked that question, good question.
Yeah, it's changed a bunch. So, when I grew up, star players, Larry Bird, his entire career, Boston Celtics, Magic Johnson, Lakers, Isaiah Thomas, the Pistons, Jordan, I guess until the end. But, that was, look, we have to all be able to adapt and adjust and adapt and adjust to the times. And I think what the league has done successfully is recognizing, okay, players are shifting, players are moving, players are exercising their right to free agency. Well, let's embrace it. Let's embrace it, and it's become a thing now. It's interesting. The NBA season ends in mid-June when the NBA finals conclude. But for the next month or 4 to 6 weeks, we still dominate the news cycle. Because, okay, the NBA, it ends, the season ends, then all of a sudden you have the draft. And so we're consumed with the excitement around the draft. The draft ends. Now we have free agency. And so now it's, where are these guys going? And we cover that, and it's excitement, not just here, domestically, but internationally. And then we have Summer League. Like, Summer League has become a thing.
Oh, yeah.
That's covered, that's watched. Players go to support their teams. It's a thing. It wasn't a thing back in the mid-90s.
Right.
No one cared about Summer League. And so we're just, the promoting and the celebrating of the sport is wonderful. And I always say the NBA, it's a global marketing and public relations firm disguised as a league. And I say that facetiously. But why they're so successful at promoting that brand and promoting its players.
Yeah.
I haven't been an elite player since, as my children would say, the last century. but people still know and recognize that because of the machine that the NBA is.
Yeah.
We all benefit as a result of that, and we will continue as we go forward.
All right, let's talk a little bit about you as a business person and an investor. And, you know, I read your book when it came out a couple years ago, and clearly, like, you grew up in a household with very successful parents who, you know, put you on a path to thinking about business from a very early age, and you have embraced that in a big way going on. You have ownership stakes in the NBA, Major League Baseball. We're going to talk with some of your fellow owners a little bit later on in the Baltimore Orioles, and in National Women's Soccer League, and in MLS. You and your wife are invested in soccer as well. I want to talk about each of those a little bit, and especially the NWSL, because we're going to hear from the commissioner and one of the star players just after this. But what's the business case for you for investing in teams?
You know, it's a great question. First of all, I mean, I've been retired since 2013, and I think any athlete, it is an adjustment period and a transition period, and we're all trying to sort of figure it out. I'm still trying to figure that out. And so I've dabbled in all sorts of things, including private equity, which is interesting because everyone in private equity is like, what are you doing? We all want to be in sports, you know? But no,
and by the way, they are.
They are, and thankfully so. You know, I just, you know, I was a fan. I grew up a fan. I watched the greatness of the NFL, NBA, college sports. It inspired me. It gave me a sense of purpose, direction. And I'm old enough, I guess, to see how this thing has played out and how the growth and evolution of sport. You know, we talked about the Olympics, and I'm a big fan, as I said, of the Olympic movement. As a history major, I'm showing off my major now, but the ancient Greeks would halt wars in the years of the Olympic Games. And they understood then, like, the power of sport and how it resonates, it inspires, it entertains. And so fast forward to present day, like that's just magnified, and it's part of who we are. It's a part of our global community. And so I just, to me, yes, I didn't put enough money in with the Atlanta Hawks. You know, I didn't invest enough in any of these deals. You only have but so much bandwidth, and I'm not in private equity. But to me, I just feel the growth trajectory, the relationship. I've lived it. I continue to live it. I see it, the passion, the excitement. When I go to sporting events now in the State Farm Arena in Atlanta, I'm just amazed that all these people from different ethnicities, different walks of life, different political affiliations, you know, the one thing that can bring people together is sport.
Yeah.
And it almost shows the very best of who we are. And we all are there cheering our team on, rooting our team on, the excitement, the elation from a win, the frustration, sometimes depression from a loss. I mean, all of those emotions and those feelings, but feeling that collectively is powerful. And seeing that on the global stage.
Right.
How many times do you bring, you know, delegations from all over the world? There's a set of rules, and you go out and compete, and we respect and honor whoever wins. You know, like that doesn't happen. Right. You know, and so there's a beauty of sports that's why we're all here.
Right.
And that's not changing. And I think that as we, you know, so immersed in technology and artificial intelligence, things I know nothing about, I think the one constant is going to be sports and the role that it plays in our society. And so, you know, I wouldn't change that. I don't. That's more philosophical, but I just believe the business is strong, and I'm grateful and appreciative to have these opportunities as an investor.
Well, and especially because you've been able to get in, candidly, at some like pretty good moments. You know, the Hawks, you look back on it, really good deal. You were early in MLS, early in NWSL. I mean, have you been surprised at we're going to talk a lot today about sort of new money and institutional capital and valuations. How surprised are you, or are you, at how valuations have risen across the board?
I'm pleasantly surprised. Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. Our television viewing habits have changed. And I remember my wife, who was here somewhere in the building, but we would, back in the mid-2000s, we would always have an argument about what we were watching as we were falling asleep at night. And I wanted to watch, Sports Center, and she wanted to watch King of Queens. And so we watched King of Queens, and or Law and Order.
Yeah.
And so what would happen is, and she's going to laugh at me wherever Tamia is, but we'd watch Law and Order, and then she'd fall asleep 10 minutes in, and now I'm hooked. You're hooked the first 10 minutes, and so now when we both have our own iPad and we're watching, so we've changed how we consume content. But the one thing that hasn't changed is watching sports in real time. We're not watching it, recording or what have you, unless you're obsessed like me and you want to rewatch the game multiple times. And there's such a hunger and a thirst and a desire for that. And so, that's not changing. And as the world has changed and will continue to change, sports is there, and it's going to be, and I'm sure there's experts who can explain that in greater detail, but so for me to have tentacles and connectivity to all of these sports, and managing director of USA Basketball, and to obviously have the Atlanta Hawks and work in television, like this sort of cross section of sports business and leadership. Are things that the sort of the sandbox that I enjoy playing in, but that it's a responsibility that we all play in promoting and continuing to grow this business collectively.
And do you guys consider, and we've got an audience question, new investments in sports? We've got a specific question about whether maybe the W someday comes into the Hill investment portfolio, WNBA.
Yeah, well, I mean, full disclosure, I tried to look into buying the Dream back in 2017, and that didn't quite work out. But, I think the WNBA is obviously at an inflection point. And I think, look, the Caitlin Clark effect has been incredible. And I think she will continue and to help this league on this incredible trajectory. But it was happening even before that. And there was incredible momentum. People look at the NBA, and this is maybe an unfair comparison, but you go back to the 1983 salary cap. And there's a great book called The Cap, and it chronicles the relationship dynamics between Larry Fleischer, who was the first head of the NBA Players Association, and David Stern, who was then the commissioner, and how the league was struggling in '83. Yeah. The league was on the verge of teams folding in 1983. And that was 36 years into the league. And so I think it takes some time for, leagues to mature, leagues to sort of get ingrained into sort of our rhythm and our psyche as spectators. And I think that was happening with the W. And then all of a sudden, Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, you have Paige Beckers, and you have Juju Watkins, the new television deal, the ratings, like it's happening now. Yeah. And so I wish I could go back to 2017. But no, I mean, look, I would love it. My daughters are athletes. I have a women's or a girls' AAU basketball program in Central Florida. So I'm a big believer in women's sports. And I think women's sports have probably the most opportunity as we continue to support and celebrate these incredible lady athletes.
Most commercial opportunity, you think?
I just think the most upside.
Yeah.
I really do. I think maybe long term, but long term, yes. The NWSL, like I'm excited for the next panel, forget about me, but to hear about where we are as a league and where we're heading.
Yeah.
And it's just an exciting time for women's sports, I think, overall.
Clearly, this guy works in television because, like, he's like, teasing to the next segment. I mean, it's so impressive. You make my job so easy. All right. So in the last minute we have, give me a minute. What's next for you? Like, what's on your to-do list for the balance of the year, business-wise? I mean, you just won a couple gold medals, but let's move on, Grant.
Yeah. No. I mean, I think settling in, getting back to some level of normalcy, which is not normal. I'm pulled in a number of different directions. I'm a bit of a busybody. I like to stay active. I'm working on trying to have better balance, and so that's but no. I mean, I can
almost feel Tamia's skepticism right now.
She's over there like, yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, I mean, I also serve on some corporate boards. I am fascinated with this idea of leadership. And to me, the role of managing director is a bit of a thankless job because everyone expects you to win, and the pressure to win is enormous. But it was an opportunity to use the totality of my experiences in a leadership role. And I feel like I learned a lot. I grew a lot. I also didn't get any sleep, so I'm still decompressing from that. But no, the season's about to start. I'm excited about that. Jumping into televisions. There's some new opportunities. My father used to tell me a whale doesn't get harpooned until it spouts. So you got to stay tuned and find out.